John Wayne Gacy threw barbecues for his neighbors, while bodies rotted beneath their feet. He wasn't hiding. He was hosting. John Wayne Gacy shook your hand, then murdered your son. He painted smiling faces. He entertained children. He shook hands with politicians. But in the crawl space beneath his house, horror waited. John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown, wasn't just a murderer. He was a man who wore two masks, one for the public and one that came off only when the doors were locked. In this episode, we walk into the split mind of a man who buried 26 boys under his own home and still believed he was a good citizen. Let's start at the beginning. John Wayne Gacy was born in 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. His father was a strict, often abusive alcoholic. From an early age, Gacy struggled to earn his father's approval and rarely succeeded. He was called weak, soft, and worthless. His childhood was marked by beatings, emotional neglect, and a desperate craving for acceptance. Despite this, Gacy tried to build a normal life. He became involved in school politics, volunteered in the community, and even got engaged. But he dropped out of high school and later worked as a shoe salesman, always projecting charm and confidence. In 1964, he married and moved to Iowa, where he managed a string of fast food restaurants. There, he gained respect as a businessman and joined the local JCs, a civic organization. But underneath that respectable image was a storm building. He was convicted in 1968 for the sexual assault of a teenage boy. He served 18 months in prison before being released on parole. Most people assumed he'd changed. They were wrong. After returning to Chicago, Gacy reinvented himself. He started his own construction business, became active in local Democratic politics, and, most notably, began performing as a clown named Pogo at charity events and hospitals. To neighbors, he was generous and kind. He hosted large backyard barbecues. He hired young men who needed work. He posed for photos with community leaders. But behind the makeup and handshakes was a man leading a double life. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys, often luring them to his house under the pretense of offering work, drugs, or a party. Once inside, he used a chilling trick called the handcuff game. He'd say, "Let me show you a magic trick," and pull out a pair of cuffs. He'd snap them onto his own wrists, then slip out easily. Then he'd ask the boy to try. When the cuffs were on the victim's wrists, he'd smile and say, "The trick is, you need the key." By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. Gacy would overpower them, often assault them, and eventually kill them by strangulation. He buried most of the bodies in the crawl space beneath his home, stacking them in layers, labeling where each one went. Others he dumped in rivers when there was no more room. He continued his public life as if nothing was wrong. He waved to children as Pogo the Clown. He shook hands with First Lady Rosalind Carter in a photo, now infamous. He laughed with police officers, all while the smell of death grew stronger in his house, and nobody asked questions. By 1978, his killing spree was unraveling. It started with a missing boy, 15-year-old Robert Peast. He'd gone to meet a man about a construction job. That man was John Wayne Gacy. When Peast never came home, his worried family called police. The trail led them straight to Gacy's front door, At first, Gacy was calm, charming even. He denied everything and allowed officers to search part of his house, but not the crawl space. He even offered them coffee, but the investigators weren't buying it. As they dug deeper, they discovered Gacy's 1968 conviction. They followed him, wiretapped his phone, and slowly pieced together the horrifying truth. One night, as he realized the walls were closing in, Gacy got drunk and confessed to his lawyers. "I've been the judge, jury, and executioner," he said. He admitted to dozens of killings, describing the crawl space like it was a warehouse. Police raided his home. What they found shocked the nation. Underneath the house were 26 decomposed bodies. Others were found in nearby rivers. The media exploded. The idea that a man who dressed like a clown, who was known in the community, had committed so many murders. It was unthinkable. The killer clown became a headline, a nightmare come to life. At trial, Gacy tried to plead insanity. His defense claimed he suffered from multiple personality disorder. They argued that Pogo the Clown was one identity and that John Gacy didn't fully understand his actions. But the jury didn't buy it. In 1980, Gacy was convicted of 33 counts of murder, the most ever for one person at the time in US history. He was sentenced to death. He would spend 14 years on death row at Menard Correctional Center. While in prison, he painted, mostly self-portraits of himself as Pogo. Some were sold for thousands of dollars. Others were burned in protest. He gave interviews. He showed no remorse. In one, he said, "I should never have been convicted of anything more serious than running a cemetery without a license." Gacy wasn't just a killer. He was a manipulator until the end. On May 10th, 1994, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection. His last words were chilling. "Kiss my ass." Let's go back for a moment, not to his crimes, but to the way people missed them. John Wayne Gacy was not an unknown figure. He hosted community events. He was named Man of the Year by a local group. He was a contractor known for hiring young boys, and no one asked why. Neighbors reported strange smells. People who visited his house said it felt off. But Gacy always had an answer. Plumbing issues, dead animals under the house. And because he was friendly, people believed him. Even when boys disappeared, some of them seen with Gacy, the dots weren't connected. It wasn't just the horror of the crimes that stunned the world. It was the fact that they happened in plain sight, that someone so normal could be hiding such darkness. This is what makes the case of John Wayne Gacy different from many other serial killers. He didn't hide in isolation. He wasn't a drifter or a stranger. He was part of the neighborhood, a good guy, the kind who waves when you mow the lawn. He made people feel safe. And that's what made him so dangerous. Even after his conviction, Gacy remained a puzzle. He showed little remorse. Instead, he talked about injustice. He said he was misunderstood. He blamed the media. He smiled for the cameras. He gave long theatrical interviews. When his execution date came, crowds gathered outside the prison. Some mourned. Others cheered. Protesters lit fireworks. Families cried. Justice, in their eyes, was finally served. In the end, the scariest thing about John Wayne Gacy isn't just what he did. It's how he got away with it for so long. How he smiled through it. how he made people believe he was normal. He didn't look like evil. He looked like your neighbor. And maybe that's the lesson. The mask of normalcy can be the most dangerous disguise of all.